Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and in this video today I want to discuss a trope that has been used in cinema since its birth really, and I'm talking about doppelgangers. So doppelgangers is a German word and it literally translates as double walker, and it's sort of the use of the uncanny and characters seeing twins of themselves and personalities transferring into other people. And yeah, it's been used since like very early on in cinema's history. And one of the first films I want to talk about is from 1913, and it's called The Student of Prague. And this is like from the pre-Weimar era of Germany, and it details the story of a poor man who sort of falls in love with a wealthy aristocrat type woman, and he basically makes a deal with a sorcerer to basically sell his soul for wealth. His image is extracted from a mirror, and then a doppelganger basically haunts him for the rest of the movie. And it's really important to highlight the socio-political climate that was in Germany at this time. The German Empire was on the verge of collapse. World War I was all on the horizon, and the German public were very much dissociating from their national identity, and this doppelganger sort of mirroring and separation of the self is very sort of evident of that, and I found that a really interesting use of the doppelganger trope. Moving on to another German film from the Weimar era, talking about what I consider to be possibly the crowning achievement of the silent era. I'm talking about Fritz Lang's Metropolis. So this film is a key example of German expressionism, and is very much a story about capitalism, Marxism, and also religion. They're all critiqued by Lang in this film in a very science fiction framed storyline. In the story, the female lead, Maria, the character, is basically cloned into a robot of sorts, and this robot looks identical to the human Maria. And it's all a commentary on industrialization and labor and things like that, and how the souls of people is basically being ruined by modern society and capitalism and stuff like that. So it's a very politically driven use of a doppelganger trope, but it's a very, very interesting one. And if you have never seen Metropolis, it is quite an undertaking to watch. It is 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's 150 minutes, and yeah, this is quite interesting because a lot of this film was missing, like considered lost for years and years and years, and then a film reel was found in an Argentinian museum some years back, and the quality of the print is quite poor, but they've been inserted into this film. So now we have, it's not quite complete, but it's the most complete most people think we're ever going to get from Metropolis, and it is an incredible film, and I highly recommend it. Leaving Germany behind, we now move to the United States in the 50s, at the height of sort of Cold War, communist paranoia. People may be more familiar with the remake or the reimagining of this film from the 70s, but I'm talking about Don Siegel's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So this is a fantastic addition from BFI with loads of special features, gives you loads of context about what's going on here. And the film is very much sort of like an anti-communist propaganda, really. It's all about the Red Scare and not knowing who your neighbor is. And if you're not familiar with the story of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, we have spores from space basically come down to Earth and infect humans, and these humans then become like the hosts for these sort of alien organisms, basically to do their bidding. And then this plays on the paranoia that was going on at the time in the 50s in the US, and the infiltration of communist ideals and all things like that. And it's like not knowing who you can trust, and again the doppelganger trope of people being like appearing to be someone who you know and love and trust, and then actually being someone they aren't. It's just a really, again, I find fascinating use of the trope, and again, a different one to the ones that we have from Germany that I've previously mentioned, and quite different to some of the other films I'm going to mention in a minute. Again, another film from the 50s, from the US. We have a film that is more about duality and obsession. I'm talking about Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. So this is, very much a film about doppelgangers. I should probably have mentioned at the start of this video that there might be some spoilers, but this film came out in 1958, and the fact that the story is about doppelgangers isn't too much of a spoiler because it becomes very apparent not too far into the film. This story is more romantically and psychologically involved with doppelgangers, and how a man who is sort of like in love with a woman who he believes to be dead sees a woman and gets to know her, and sort of basically wants to sort of change her to be the perfect version of what she looks like compared to the woman he used to love. And the thing is, it's played by the same actress, Kim Novak, and the use of lighting in this film, and it's just absolutely fascinating. And the doppelganger is used to distinguish between fiction and reality, or fantasy I should say, over fiction. Pushing forward a few more years, we're gonna talk about a Swedish film which is one of my favourite films of all time. It's very much about fractured identity, and this is Ingmar Bergman's magnum opus, in my opinion, Persona. As I said, from '66, and this is an abstract doubling of personalities. So central plot of Persona is a mute woman is taken to an isolated island and looked after by a nurse, and these two people live on this island, and over time their identities start to switch or become one, and it's not quite sure exactly what's going on. It's a very abstract film with multiple lines of interpretation. The use of like blonde and brunette, as I probably didn't say, but in Vertigo we have the characters that go from blonde and brunette, and again Lynch in his films Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway use this as well to identify the doppelganger sort of themes here. So it's just an easy way of changing someone's appearance, but not too drastically so you don't recognize who they are, but it's just like something not quite right, especially if you've known them all their life as a certain hair color, and then at some point you see someone who looks just like that person but their hair is now brown or red or something like that. And Persona is particularly interesting because the two actresses, who may not appear to look particularly like identical, when you see them standing next to each other, there's a particular scene in the film where their profile is split in half and then joined together, and it's like quite fascinating how similar these actresses look. And it's just an absolutely fascinating film that I've seen many times, and I get a new read on it every time. And another reason why I think Doppelgangers is one of the most interesting tropes in cinema. The next two films are both in my top 10 films of all time, so that may give away what, if you know me or follow me on Letterboxd or anything like that, you may know what these films are, but they very much deal with doppelgangers. That's the theme of the video today. But first up, we're talking about John Carpenter's masterpiece, The Thing. This is very much a sort of Lovecraft nihilism form of doppelgangers. We have the isolated environment and the paranoia of the alien infiltration, which could be sort of linked back again to sort of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and fear of communist infiltration and stuff, but it's more of fear of the other. And as the story progresses, characters become infected by the thing and we don't know who is who, and then we have these transitions and people are like sort of off, and you can sort of tell that they're not quite right, but they look on the outside like the people that we know. And also it has some of the best special effects of all time. It has a great score by Ennio Morricone, and honestly, The Thing, I talked about it on my podcast recently with my good friend Nathan Jones, and we paired that with a film that isn't about doppelgangers but is very much about paranoid isolation and things like that with Tarantino's Hateful Eight. But enough about that, we're talking about doppelgangers here. And then lastly, I want to talk about what is my favorite horror film of all time, Andrzej Zulawski's Possession. So I have to cover the front cover up here just in case I get flagged, because there is nudity on the front of this DVD case, Blu-ray case. This again continues the theme like of Lovecraft nihilism, but then sort of extends it into sort of madness and exile, which are very strong themes in Possession, and uses the doppelganger trope as a sort of vehicle for the breakdown of marriage and, you know, the nuclear, you know, family unit. But what makes Possession even more interesting is because even though it deals with doppelgangers for, you know, love and obsession and madness and exile, as I said, it also deals with socio-political issues going on in the countries at the time, because where it was set, as it's the Berlin Wall is very strongly featured in the film, and it definitely has some, you know, symbolism there for that reason, and it has lots of body horror like The Thing. The trope is generally associated with horror or science fiction related genre film, I would say, you know, because of the uncanniness and the just the concept of the doppelganger. This doesn't really play well into, like, you know, your straight up drama films and things like that. So, you know, it's always been rooted in the horror and science fiction genre. There are many other films I could have discussed in depth. I just thought, you know, I'd pick up a few that I think are worth bringing to people's attention if they've never seen them, or thinking about in a different way regarding doppelgangers and how they are used, you know, as a vehicle or a metaphor or a theme for different stories that are being told. And if there's any other films that you can think of that use the doppelganger trope that I haven't mentioned in this video, please leave a comment below, because I'm constantly on the lookout for films with this trope. Cronenberg's done it with Dead Ringers. We have people like Christopher Nolan has done it with The Prestige. Us, Jordan Peele film recently used doppelgangers as a trope. It's quite ubiquitous when you actually look down and look at all these films throughout history and even modern times where this trope has been used. But I never feel like it's outstayed its welcome or is sort of being played out too much. It's always been used in a nice, refreshing way that keeps me intrigued and just really invested in, like, learning more about what is our fascination with doppelgangers and things like that. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think of these films that I've suggested as doppelganger examples in cinema history. And yeah, until next time everyone, take care.